Maschine Masters family. My name is MG The Future. Today I'm bringing you guys another exclusive tutorial for the Maschine Masters. Today's video is going to be about Kendrick Lamar's DNA. And when I was studying it, I picked up some techniques I figured I could teach you guys in regards to figuring out the key to samples. And it's a technique that I needed to kind of figure out some of the parts of this particular track in its remake. And I ran into some other challenges and difficulties that I figured I'd let you guys in on so it could help you in your productions, especially when you're trying to build around a sample. And this is going to make a lot more sense once I show you what I mean. So first things first, I'll head over to Ableton Live. For the sake of YouTube, I pitched the sample up. And if you haven't heard the album yet, damn, definitely check it out. But this is the track I'll be working on. It's 1 octave up. Sometimes that's cool to do, to raise a sample a whole octave, especially if you want to hear the bass line. It's easier to kind of figure out the pitch and the keys when you pitch something up all the way up, but keeping it in the same scale by just raising it 12 steps. So the first thing I did was I exported this loop in its original tempo and I opened up Key Finder. And what it told me was that this particular track was in B minor. So from that, all we would have to do is find out the scale of B minor, and it's these keys here. However, when I was trying to replay the melody within that scale, it was missing a key, and I believe it was F. So when it gave me the readout, and I'm pretty sure I saved it so I could show you guys. The readout gave me this. It's not really good data, because there's a lot of the voices in there and the drums are in there, so it's throwing the pitch off. But if you can kind of train your mind to see the common denominator keys, or the ones that are chopped up or choppy the most, you see there's a lot of B, a lot of F sharp, etc., etc. So I try to play it based on these keys by folding it, and a lot of these are octaved, but it still wasn't sounding right. So the next thing I did was I isolated the bass. And I'll let you guys hear that. And what I did was I put a low pass filter on the sample or the track itself, and I resampled it just so that the filtered version is left. You can't hear this on a mobile device, so when you get a chance, put some headphones on or a speaker. But basically that's the bass line from the song. So instead of trying to get the harmonic content from that, I right-clicked it and chose melody, which is usually monophonic, and it gave me the bass line, which is this: B, E, F, B, and a C in there. So because I know F wasn't in our B minor scale, I knew it had to be something else. So that's what this website's good for: scales and chords. So here is our musical scale finder tool. And this step right here is perfect when you are able to get that kind of data out of songs you're sampling. I'm using it for this example, but it's more applied for me to when I'm sampling stuff, trying to figure out the bass line for a sample, if I want to throw some chords on the sample, things like that. So I typed in B, E, F, and C, which came from our bass line, and I told it to find me a scale. First glance, it gives us C major, of course, because it's all white keys. But I ran into a problem with that. B is the 6th interval, and that's not common when people are playing piano or scales to start on the 6. Usually starting on the 1 or the 4 or the 5 is really good. So I looked down this list, and I found one where B was 1, or it was the root. And it was in the Locrian scale, which is common in rock, which is interesting because that particular sample or that arpeggiator that Mike Will Made It is using sounds like a rock and roll guitar. So B is our first interval, E is our 4th interval, and F is our 5. So it's a 1, 4, 5, 2. And if you think about 1, 4, 5, 2 in a major scale, that's a lot of the pop songs are written in. Same thing with minor to some extent, it's 1, 4, 5, 6. But 1, 4, 5, 2 or 1, 4, 5, 6. So Locrian was perfect. And that's when I started building from there. So once you know that, or you find a root note that works for you within any of these scales that it finds, you can plug that away in Ableton Live. And to show you that, or to highlight that, I have an Ableton Live piano, For this particular piano, I'm using the East West Gold collection that comes with all their instruments. It's just a regular piano. So to change that, and I'm going to show you how to build your own MIDI rack. Me, I don't play in every scale natively, so I use the help of MIDI modifiers. These are in Fruity Loops has something like it, Studio One has something like it, Logic has something like that, maybe even Bitwig. But basically, the scale modifier allows you, before the instrument, to transpose your input to a particular scale. So in this case, it was Locrian, or let me see. Yeah, it was a Locrian scale, so I look for Locrian on this list, Locrian mode, and now when I hit my keys, they're going to sound different and play different. And I'm walking down all white keys, and it's fixing it for me. So once you have Locrian and you have it fixed, you want to change your bass to B since it's B Locrian. So we have one problem in doing that. Since the bass B is the first key, I like to fix that to my playing. So when I hit C, it's saying I'm hitting C because that's in the scale, but I wanted to actually hit B. I want it to be the first key within the scale builder. So I'll go ahead and grab a pitch tool, which is basically just transpose. And I'm going to transpose it until C becomes B, which should be one step backwards. Now it's B. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now that way you can play by numbers within that scale. So it's 1, 4, 5. So B, E, and F, which is perfect. 1, 4, and 5. And then he used the 2, which is C. So now you can play that. And I like that MIDI modifier because you can pretty much play anything and it snaps it or transposes it on the way in, which is also dope to use with that. Just to throw it out there, is our arpeggiator. Throw it in before it conforms to a scale. And you'll notice the white keys on the VST are within that scale. Even if I'm hitting all black keys. So it's perfect for you guys who don't have an arpeggiator in your favorite instrument and wanted to make one, and also to keep it in key so it doesn't jump out, which is perfect for making chords around samples, keeping it in the scale to sample when you play an arp, because a lot of arps will go into their own key based on the programming. But anyway, so once I had all that together, I figured out the scale from the bass line. Then once I set my MIDI around it, I was able to replay it. And then once I replayed it, I ran into a different set of challenges, which is in regards to finding the guitar that he used. I saw in his Mike Will's making of another track that he was very fond of Nexus. I personally don't have Nexus. I prefer Silent over it because you can make your own sounds. But in this particular case, it sounded like a rock guitar. So I picked one, and this is what mine sounds like. I have the keys here. So it's a very different guitar, but it's still a rock guitar. I believe this is also East West Ministry of Rock, which has a ton of guitars and chords and chugs and different articulations that you can play with. I ran it through an amp simulator that kind of gave it this delay, how the original sample is. So without it, it kind of gives a delay, kind of a bouncy feeling. And then I wasn't satisfied with that by itself, so I looked for ARP, because on the breakdown in that song, you're going to notice there's like this pad or a different ARP that's kind of dark, it kind of blends in with the choir sound. So I said, well, let me go ahead and get an ARP too to kind of give it more rhythm. So I pulled up Omnisphere and I sorted all of its banks by rock because I figured that'd be the easiest way to find the sound I'm looking for. And I was looking for the same main guitar, couldn't find it. Of course, there's like 10,000 different instruments to go through to find it. But I came across Intervals of Bliss, which is really dope. And what I ended up doing is I threw it within the same guitar amplifier to kind of mesh those two sounds together. Neutron is just for the EQ. And some high pass to take the highs out because it's being distorted by the amplifier. And Kickstart, which is simulating a chain compression, like sidechain, just a gating effect. It's really dope, so you don't have to set it up to no kick. It'll just sidechain regardless if there's a trigger or not. And this is what that sounds like. So those two together. I'm playing the same exact keys for both of these because that ARP is playing different notes, of course. But within the actual track, they're using fifths, I believe, because if you look at the MIDI for it, you'll see a lot of these keys are layered up. And I started to do that on my original test for it, but then I changed my mind because the direction I was going sounded better to me. But if you look at the MIDI data, you'll see like it's B and F sharp, B and F sharp, B and F sharp. If I'm not mistaken, those are a fifth apart or a similar interval. And you notice they're octaved up from each other. There's 3 different octaves of that particular chord. So you could play just the 1 and 5 and so on and so forth for each key if you wanted to find that particular sound. And the last thing was the choir. I tried to play the choir a fifth up, but it wasn't working out for me. It didn't sound or mesh right. So I played it in the same exact key, but I added this kind of flutter to it. And I have it in a hall reverb to kind of throw it in the back. And then I have the gate on it as well. And pretty much that's it. So from all of that, when you listen to a lot of dope trap records or radio friendly trap records, you'll notice that most of them, as far as compositions, don't change a lot in respect to the instrumentation. It's almost the same thing through and through, especially in our modern era. And that's pretty cool from a composer standpoint. And most of them are 2-bar loops, not any much longer, like Mask Off. Everyone likes that 2-bar flute loop. And everything else is really bass, making sure the bass is in key or making sure the bass is doing what it's supposed to do. And I use the same exact bass line. And also, if you're trying to go for a particular style genre, always start with the drums. That's what I did. I started with the drum pattern first because it was a little tricky. The hi-hats were throwing me off a little bit because I couldn't hear just the instrumental version of it. But what's happening is the hi-hats are going on a steady pattern, but they're dropping on the clap. Like there's no hat touching the clap, and there's some gaps between each turnaround. So that's that. Once that was over, as far as the arrangement of the song goes, the change up or the release and the tension and release of the actual composition, which you can apply to any track, is they drop the kick. And I noticed Mike Will's not the only producer that does that. Zaytoven does that a lot. Even some of the producers that you hear on different websites and YouTube and stuff, they use a kick drop as their energy modifier. It's hard to explain. I don't know the correct term for it, but instead of dropping an instrument, they drop the drums. and it changes the vibe of the track. So they do it every 4 bars. There's a back and forth, or there's, you know, there's mixed arrangements of it. And then I'll play that through to let you guys hear it. But lastly was the sample, which I figured out was Rick James from a live performance. Unfortunately, YouTube blocks it, but I got around that. So let me let you guys hear that. This is pitched up as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Give me some ganja. Give me some ganja.
So I pitched that down, and it's part of his live performance right before he does the song Mary Jane. It's like his intro to the track. He just randomly says it. So they chop that up, and I chop mine up like this, which is similar.
Give me some ganja. Ganja. 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 Give me some ganja.
And the only thing I'm doing is I'm auto-tuning it or conforming the pitch to B minor.
Give me some ganja. Ganja. Give me some ganja. Ganja. Give me some ganja.
All right, so I'm gonna run this back all together just so you guys get a feel for it. And that's the kick drop I was talking about. It changes the energy when it comes in. So that's it for Kendrick Lamar's DNA, or my particular interpolation of it, because it is a different version of it, but it's within the same scale. And these particular techniques, as far as the troubleshooting of what's going on, I know a lot of people are going to say something to the effect of learn music theory, use your ears, etc. And my only statement to that is, when you've been doing it as long as I have, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for someone like me. What I mean by that is, I work with a piano player, Tommy D, of course, who's an expert at playing everything by ear. It's a talent and it's a gift that is unique to those people that can do it. And I've noticed that most of those people who can do that can sing very well. He sings very well. I can't sing at all, so I'm not wired that way. I can't sing or hear tones and notes the same way as everyone else does. And also to learn every scale, like Ionian and Locrian, and one that's used a lot, Dorian, takes time. And it's time that we don't necessarily need to spend figuring out if we have the technology that was created to help us, such as the key finders of the world and the right click and extract to MIDI and all these different features that are given to us. It took me 5 minutes to figure this out with those particular tools and websites. So with that being said, do whatever suits you best, but this particular context and layout works best for me. And also with the samples, like if you're sampling soul or you're sampling some foreign stuff, especially the Indian stuff, that's definitely not in our scale, Western scales. So having these tools available to you, especially to figure out lead sounds and bass lines, is undisposable. And this is one very small example of how to implement them. This, of course, is to show you that track, but you can do all kinds of things. You can figure out chords. You can use the chord modifier, build chord progressions around samples. You can even change the key of things. Like once you figured out what that was in Locrian, you can switch it to F Locrian, or you can switch to B Dorian and just get a whole different vibe, a whole different feel to initiate a whole nother beat. And with all the loop packs in our Maschine Masters shop, that's a good way to use them, especially the Tim Kelly stuff that just came out, Ocean's 11 pack. If you don't have it, definitely check it out. It just helps you build around it. My particular pack, Trapanese, so on and so forth. I sound like a broken record, but I just want to drive that point home. I know what the peanut gallery says, but I'm telling you, there's no shame in my game. I get work done. But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking us out. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the box below. If you're not a subscriber, definitely subscribe. That'll help us out tremendously. If you have any recommendations for future videos, you can reach me on Instagram at MGTheFuture. Until next time, thank you for watching the Maschine Masters.